So Alan, can you tell me how you got into cricket, please?
How I got into cricket? Well, I suppose growing up when I did, there were only two options really. You played cricket in the summer, and you played football, or in some cases rugby in the winter, and that's what everybody did as kids. And I just rolled up at the cricket ground at Long Ashton as probably about, I don't know, maybe 12-year-old or 13-year-old, and picked up the ball behind the, where the players were netting, and rolled it back, and then eventually they let you have a bowl, and then eventually they let you have a bat, and that's how it developed. We did have a little sort of youth setup. It was very informal. Yeah, we used to cycle to places like Nailsea and Backwell, and with pads strapped to the crossbar and play cricket. So that's how I started, and then I got onto, eventually got into the first team as a sort of teenager, and then I shot off to college in Manchester and played a little bit of Lancashire and Cheshire League cricket, which was really interesting because, of course, here cricket was just friendlies, same people every season. This Saturday you played there, and next Saturday you played there. So league cricket was quite an eye-opener. We had a professional, and I realised that was quite a different dimension, but that was good. A couple of years there while I was at college, and then I got married and moved to Thornbury and turned up here in April 1963, a long time ago.
And you've been involved with Thornbury for a long time since. What makes Thornbury a special club to be a part of?
Well, it's always been very much a family's club, really. I think it's always, well, up until recent years at least, it's always had plenty of people volunteering to do things. And in my time as a player, the kids came, women sat and chatted doing their knitting or whatever they did, and the kids played around the ground, and we all threw them in the back of cars and went off and played somewhere. It was, very much a family, social environment, really. Yeah.
And then how did you make that transition from player to the various different volunteering roles that you had?
I suppose I started volunteering whilst I was still a player. I think I did the treasurer's job here very early on in the 60s somewhere. But I mean, treasurer then was, just adding up a few numbers, really. I mean, crikey, it's moved on. You almost need to be an accountant to be a club treasurer nowadays. So I did that, and then someone persuaded me to be secretary at one time, and then I club captain for a while. And then when I stopped playing first team, I dropped down and captain the seconds, which I really enjoyed. Club captain's quite hard. I mean, we went through a time where we weren't the strongest side in the league as well, so because by then we had league cricket, of course. And then when I stopped playing, I think I was chairman for a few years, 5 years or something, and then stepped back from that primarily because I think I was getting more and more involved in WEPL, West of England Premier League. So.
Can you explain a little bit about what you do with WEPL and how that came about? WEPL
kicked off in 1999, and I was friendly with a guy called Nick Finan, another ex-Gloucestershire player, quick bowler, and he was running what I think they then called the facilities committee or something, and he asked me to sit on this committee, which I did, and then within a year he decided he didn't want to do it anymore. So I took over as chairman of that, and it sort of morphed and developed into what we now call standards and disciplines. So standards-wise, it's looking at criteria, pitches, facilities, the whole gambit really, and then also discipline, looking at, as discipline officer, dealing with the not so many, but still too many discipline issues that umpires report. So, and that's developed. So I've been doing that for probably nearly, it must be 20 years, So.
And you mentioned before we started recording about your work with the Volunteers Trust, where What's kept you volunteering for so long? Obviously, you then
Well,
moved on to helping other volunteers find places.
Well, as John knows, I do quite a few things really. Yeah, I'm a trustee of my golf club. I'm a Rotarian. I do what I do with Whipple. I don't do anything here at Thornbury now specifically, other than perhaps keep in touch with people like John and the chairman and one or two others, just to ask what I think might be the appropriate question, or offer a bit of advice, whatever. But because I think the club's in good hands, so I'm a step back from that. But so what keeps me volunteering? Well, I've always taken the view, you're only here once, you might as well use your time. And I have some experience both in the game and albeit at club level, but I got some what I think is useful experience. And I had a busy career. I was used to being busy. I'd rather be busy. So that's why I'm here, really. Yeah.
You talk about at club level and not necessarily being too grand or anything like that, but volunteers are the heart of what makes these clubs. Without them, they don't exist, do they? So I wouldn't play down that involvement.
No, the world would stop without volunteers. Not just in cricket, but everywhere, really. I know that through my link with the volunteer centre. Yeah.
And would you say that you're seeing there's a reduction in volunteers?
Oh yeah,
more
definitely.
generally.
Yeah, definitely. There's still a lot of people who will do something. What they won't do is commit. Commit to, a role like secretary, treasurer, chairman, roles that do demand some time. I understand that. I think, life's changed. I mean, in my day, I went to work. My wife didn't work. Brought the kids up, and I had free time. Whereas I recognise that's less the case with lots of families now. They don't have that time because both parents work, and life's perhaps a bit more of a struggle than it. I'm not saying it was easy when I grew up, but you could always find some room.
And in your role at Whipple, you work, obviously, everyone at Whipple is a volunteer, and then you work with other volunteers. How do you balance their commitments as well as obviously your commitments, as well as then the expectations set down by the ECB on Premier Leagues?
But it is being delivered by volunteers, and not all volunteers have a lot of free time. So I sometimes think there's a bit of a disconnect there. So in terms of working with my other colleagues, I think quite a lot of us have been on the Whipple board a fair time. And I know the ECB would like to see more turnover of people on the boards, which is okay. I recognise the need for new blood, new thoughts, new ideas, but at the same time you do need some continuity. And that has to be a balance as well. But we work well together. We're lucky with one or two people, people like Harry and Nicola, who give us that direct link to the county foundations, which is valuable. And because cricket's part of their daily life, they can often fit a bit in that some of the rest of us can't. But it works okay, I think. Yeah.
And you also then have to work with other organisations like the local grounds association. Like, how vital are those other organisations to recreational cricket and I suppose to Whipple more directly?
Well, recreational cricket relies on a couple of things that I don't think get a lot of thought sometimes. One is groundsmen. If you want to produce a decent pitch to play on, you need groundsmen who know what they're doing. And as you see some of the, shall I say, older, elderly groundsmen finishing and younger people taking on, that can pose a risk to clubs, really. There have been a couple of very recent examples, and John, who's groundsman here and Gloucestershire pitch advisor, and I went to a ground recently where having an older person in place, not up to the job, not able to do the job. They've got a lot of problems, and you want new people to take over and to train. And the other key area is umpires, and I think umpires is probably at the moment for Premier League cricket almost an Achilles heel. Very short of umpires.
Mm-hmm.
We ran a system based on points awarded. If you provided an umpire into the pool, you got some extra points. Not popular, and really not what we wanted to do, but it did produce some umpires.
Mm-hmm.
I know last week at Premier 2 level, at least one game went without one umpire. So, it's not where you need to be. It's a pity. I chair as well. I chair the Whipple umpires as well. Which is, that's quite a nice job to do, where we, rank umpires and promote and drop back umpires. But umpires are a real issue.
Are there any ideas then that you have that you think could improve, well, firstly, the number of umpires and then...
Well...
And then the quality of those
if you go back a bit, players when they retired often turned to umpiring. Mm-hmm. But now, as we were saying earlier, you can play over 40s, over 50s, over 60s, over 70s, and even over 80s. So a lot of players are doing that, playing much longer, so they're not available as umpires. A lot of guys are turning to golf. Golf's become much easier in terms of access. If you go back 30 years or so, it wasn't easy to join golf clubs, whereas now it's pretty simple, pay and play places. So there's lots of reasons why, and umpires will tell you player behaviour has not helped. Mm-hmm. No umpire, umpires will always get it wrong. Of course they get it wrong. Everybody we all get things wrong, but it doesn't help when the outgoing batsman gives you an earful of not very pleasant language, and why would you stand out there for 100 hours and have that? People won't do it. So I don't know where they come from, short of a similar award system, which is what I think we might be going back to next season. I can't see any other way.
And then with volunteering, what would you say you find the most rewarding part of volunteering?
Most rewarding part? I think in terms of cricket, still being involved in a game that I got right out of. I enjoyed my, however long it was, quite a long time I suppose. I played till I was 55. I got a lot out of the game, and it's nice to still be involved. It's nice to still see people. I go to other clubs and see guys I played against, and we reminisce and say how much better it was in our day, as you always do. Having said that, it certainly wasn't. I think the standard of cricket at Premier 1 and to a lesser extent Premier 2 is extremely high. I wouldn't have played at Premier 1, I know that. But so it's still having the involvement, and just the comfort of being able to come and enjoy the cricket, and and being able to influence it a little bit. I think that's nice. I've always felt if you belong to any organisation, you should at some stage, when you're able and when you're capable, be able, be prepared to influence what you see. And what else will I do? I'm not one to sit around all day anyway. So
that's great. And finally, do you have any advice for anyone that's maybe on the fence about volunteering, or thinking about whether that's going and volunteering at their local club or stepping up and volunteering in a league system like Whipple?
I have a personal philosophy that life is about opportunities, and if you have an opportunity, you should, if you can, take it, and try and take it. And I think a lot of people are frightened of, I'm not sure I can do it, or I'm not sure I can commit. I think there's two issues really. I think one is give it a go. If it's not for you and it doesn't work, you can always walk away from it. Mm-hmm. It's not, it's not a life commitment. I think the other thing is organisations have to be more understanding that maybe people can't give quite as much, but they can give something.
Yeah.
And so that means you might have to look at your organisation to see how best you can fit Fred Bloggs in or Jane Doe in or whatever, because they want to do something. So it's not easy. Life's so busy for people now, I think. I know it's trite to say that, but I think it is busy. But it was busy, I've always been busy, so you can find time if you really want to. So try and find something you think you will enjoy, and if you're a cricketer. I mean, Harry's a great example. Harry's not really been a cricketer, been around, but he's not only doing an important job here as first 11 scorer, but he's now made a career out of it.
Yeah.
So you've got to give it a go. If you don't give it a go, you'll never know, will you?